Hello everyone, and welcome to Wednesdays. More trees. After last week's, I thought I'd work in some of the things that a little different. In this instance, I posted 3 pictures. This one, and this one. This one I'm still looking at. It's beautiful. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. This one is frankly an oil painting subject or an opaque medium subject. I'm also thinking about ways that one might do that. Hello, Carol. Joey. Hello. This one I think I want to do because it has some things that are well worth looking at to make us better artists. Not people who copy pictures, but people who see things the way artists see things. There's some lovely compositional things going on here that I hope rather than look at this and see trees and leaves and sticks and sky and whatnot, if we're going to become painters, we want to see the sort of visual language or the rhythms that happen in this. Can you see if you look at this boom, 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 the way the limbs do that. And then in the color, there's a little bit of all of these are from a place where I sometimes walk in the morning, and the light is just coming up, and some of the oranges in the trees back here are beginning to be illuminated, the yellows starting to catch some of the light, but down in the bottom, it's cool, it's in shadow. But if you look at this, there's the pattern of the leaves that are starting to get some illumination. It goes shoo, shoo, shoo. So if we see these rhythms, these patterns, these are things that create motion and lead the eye through the picture and make it interesting rather than just a catalog of this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing. So for the drawing, I'm going to work right off of that pattern of those things. I'm sure I selected this just for that reason. It's a little bit above half. It just comes down here and then zooms down there and then comes up here. So I'm just going to throw this in loosely. I'm going to now try to find one. I love the way this leans this way, this one a little bit, and this one is kind of our stasis. It's the thing that's providing the verticality that keeps us from tipping too far one way or too far the other. So these are just lines. We're going to accomplish this with painting. John, hello. Everyone should definitely go to the Arts and Convention Center in Fairfield and see John's paintings if you have not already done so already. Because they're just, I am not an abstract painter, but I'm amazed at what John can do. John is an incredible abstract painter. And that is what I'm hoping people will look for in these sorts of situations, that there's just the opportunity to find these lovely abstract shapes and patterns. I almost don't want to do any more than this because I want to paint off of this. Yes, I will. So, how to paint this, the color, where are we going to go with this? I'll be the first to admit that this is not this sort of subject is not really my strong suit. But it's good to try these things and learn these things. That's how we discover how to paint them. Even if we don't think we can pull it off, because in a way it's better to run out of gas a couple miles from where you're trying to get to than to just stay sitting in your driveway with a full tank of gas and never go anywhere. I'm looking at that pattern of leaves back there, this pattern of leaves. I've got orange, I've got brown, I've got yellow green, I've got cool greens, bluish greens, I've got these grays, these darks. If I kind of cross my eyes, I see a little bit of some violet or some very dull purple in there. Hi, James. Hi, Kathy. I also see that maybe the warm colors are in the top section of the painting and the colder colors, the blues, the violets, and the blue-greens are in this lower section of the painting. So to get some soft edges, which I'm hoping will stay behind and not come too far forward and compete with these mostly bare trees, I'm going to mix up a variety of colors, use a big brush, a mop brush. I'm going to make some runny mixes of paint. I'm going to get a blue-violet, which, you know, ultramarine blue, and possibly, it looks dark, but when we put it down there, it's going to come out pretty light. Maybe put a little bit of the quinacridone rose in there to make it slightly violet. So I've got that one set. Rinse and blot my brush, get some clean water. I need to get some yellows and oranges going. I've got a very strong cat orange. I'm going to keep that over here. And I'm going to try to execute that section wet and wet. Alicia, hello. Jan, hello. Yellows. I can dip right into this cadmium yellow. I can dip right into this yellow ochre. I can dip right into this burnt sienna. And I think I'll just use that as I go. So again, I'm thinking very big pattern. I'm not thinking very specific things yet. I'm thinking about the like that. So let's get some of that blue going with a beaded wash. It's going to be pretty pale. I'm going to try and I don't usually do this sort of thing, but this is the nice thing about the beaded wash, is that it waits for you while you come in with these other colors. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get the orange, and I want a soft edge. I might make that a little stronger. It's fall, you know, if you don't get them in exactly where they happen to be, it's all right. Now there's some of that orange over in here, a little bit in here. This is where the yellow starts. This is not the only way we could do this. One could splatter this stuff on there, and now I'm going to make it a yellower green by putting it into the blue over here that I've previously used. And now you're saying, well, that looks like a big gloppy area of that color. But these are little specific leaves. They're lighter than that darker surrounding, so we will negatively paint them let's get a very greenish Mountain Dew kind of yellow going in this vicinity. And what we're going to do is we're going to make those individual leaves appear by virtue of painting the darker colors around them. Maybe even a little bluishness in there, because I see some blue-greens. In here, there's a kind of a pale ochre type yellow. And that'll be nice. I hope. Like I say, this is not my strong suit. So, I'm down to here. This area, I see purple. So into that blue mix, ultramarine blue, more paint, less water. So this is going to be a darker mix, and a little bit of the crimson. So we are shooting deliberately for that holy mess stage. Let's put a little bit of turquoise in there with the purple. We're getting this might be overstating it. Just if it looks too vibrant, put a little burnt sienna in there. See, that looks really, I know, pretty crazy, right? So you can see, because this is all happening in a very wet state, leave some little skips. We can make something out of those. Golly, let's put a little burnt sienna in that purple so that it's not the same as it comes down this hill towards this area. So I want to get quickly to this area because it's wet or is drying out. And if I leave some little skips here and there, maybe I can fill them in later if I don't like them. But I could also keep your bead going here. I could also tint them light to make them look like leaves. Lucy, hello. All kinds of new friends today. A little bit more of some greenish yellow. Putting some turquoise into that yellow. I'm going to start letting that blend and mingle and mix in here, because a lot of what goes on here is not going to really appear until later when we put the darker tones in and negatively paint what it is we're seeing. So what is this? It's a pinker gray. I'm going to put a little more of the alizarin and a little bit more water. Now, these are not the darkest colors that are going to be here. There's going to, redder still, pinker still, more water. These are not the darkest colors that will appear in these areas. These are the lightest colors in these areas. In watercolor, we always pretty much work light to dark, the reverse of what you might work in the opaque mediums, and we work soft edges to distinct edges. Now at this stage, hi Cindy, maybe I'll even I'm going to put this down. It's drier up here. It's wetter down here because this board is at about a 45-degree angle. It's a 140-pound cold press. While that's damp, I might even splatter a bit of water, and maybe you can see this, some light spots will appear, because what's happening there is the water is pushing the pigment that we just put down out of the way, and it's going to make some irregular textures that we can either paint over darker, or we might be able to use them for this extreme forest floor texture kind of thing. So we're using the gravity and the hydraulics. water is moving downhill, so this is drier, that's wetter. The paint is, there's still water on the surface. The paint has not yet settled to the surface. When we throw water in there, it pushes the pigment out of the way. Just as if we splattered paint on there, it would push the other paint out of the way. So this we're going to dry. So let me mute the thing so you don't have to listen to the hairdryer. All right, now we've got our lighter tones of everything in there. We're going to start working with some medium values, that kind of thing. Hi, Mickey. Gosh, all kinds of friends tuning in today. I think I'm done with the drawing. Any kind of drawing that happens now is going to be done with the brush. So this isn't particularly big brush type stuff. We're going to use I was using the squirrel hair mop for the big areas because it holds a lot of paint. Going to go for a stiffer brush. It's big-ish, but it's coarser hair and doesn't hold as much water, and it moves stiffer paint because the mixes we're going to be using now are not runny like that pinkish red or the colors we've been using there. You can see them running around. They're going to be a little stiffer. I'm reluctant to blot them up because I might be able to use them. The other thing, I was over here, I have like a towel, washcloth type towel thing that I blot the brush on occasionally. And sometimes I don't mention that. You don't want to paint an area, get it wet, and then change your color or rinse the brush and bring more water to it because you will dilute what you've painted there. And you may want to do that, but you might not want to do that too. So this red violet, I'm going to make a little more neutral. But I'm also going to make it a little, but not as vibrant as this, but I'm going to go darker for like some of these limbs. I'm going to go bluer down here where we're below the level of the light, where it's a little shadier. So I'll be using mixtures of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a number of any of my blues, where I want it, maybe if I want it a little duller and darker, I'll be using a mixture of the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue. So I'm going to try to get in maybe these main trunks. So ultramarine blue. Over here, same stuff. Now see, this is slow moving paint. One of these mixtures is going to be a little bluer, one's going to be a little browner. Putting the burnt sienna into this one. This will be a higher concentration of the burnt sienna. This one will be a higher concentration of the blue. And we may even modify that as we go down. There's some other blues in here as well. Cerulean, cobalt, cobalt turquoise, Holbein lavender. So this is where we have to grit our teeth say, yeah, I know it looks like a tie-dyed t-shirt. But the thing to do here is remember that some of these trees are closer to us, some of them are a little further away, some of them are quite far back. Some of them are thicker, some of them are medium, some of them are thinner. As they go back, to get that sense of their going back, we'll want to make them thinner and maybe lighter. As they come forward, we're going to want to make them thicker and maybe darker. But since they're a long linear object, we don't want to keep them the exact same color all along their length. We want to make them maybe a little browner up here and a little bluer as we come down there. So let's make it discernibly browner. I'm going to start with the bluish ones, and I'm going to try and paint it the same way the tree grows. So thicker down here, bluer down here. Leave some skips to indicate possibly blotted, browner at the top. I'm touching that into what I've previously painted. Now again, browner. Trying to paint the way the tree grows and have when possible, find it, lose it, find it. Squint your eyes. Have the bases be in different places. There's some little darkness over here. So there's those. Now I've got this big one up here. I'm going to start with maybe a little cerulean blue to get a different character. If they're not all the same color, they won't appear the same. So to the point where the junction is, maybe. You can get a thicker mark by pressing on the brush. Now into the browner mix. Let a little of that run downhill. If it's too thick there, make it thicker down here. So as long as these things are not all the same width, they're not all the same color, it'll help. Now we've got some business that some that are just going every which way around here. I'm squinting and really trying to find the ones that show up the most. Just for some now there's some separation of brown and the blue here. I hope you can see that. I'm going to blot this. I'm going to go in for some turquoise here and touch it into creamy paint and touch it into what's happening here. And hopefully we'll modify this to give it a slightly different character. There's other stuff going on here. There's a very wobbly, let's do one that's turquoise and burnt sienna. Mostly turquoise, or maybe a little bit of cerulean blue. Down here it's at its largest. Then it crosses over this one. Some dark ones in here. Up here it's a little browner, so I'm going to try to take it out like that. Now we've got all kinds of other branches that, oh my goodness, look at them all. Linda, hello. I've got stuff going this way. Now thin ones, like I say, as we're going back in space, I might start their bases here, find them in there, touch a bit of color into these things to change their character. I'm going to put a wee bit of water in the mixtures I've been using to make them a little bit lighter so that the ones that I'm doing back here are not quite as dark. So then hopefully they will appear to be further away. Lose them and find them, lose them and find them. I like this one that goes, it's a blue one, a little more water. Counter your angles. If there's a lot of stuff going one way, try to make something come out the other way. There are some leaning. Lose them and find them. Make sure that the bases aren't all in the same place. Out of that purple mix, I'm going to try to pull some right off the top of that towards the edge of the picture. The other thing that's really important with these bare trees, keep these intervals between them irregular. Don't space them equally. Just to break out, to help me from making a jungly mess, I'm going to splatter some darks, and maybe I can turn those into stuff. This is the kind of place a lot of texture is going to help. My goodness, yeah. Back there, it's warmer. I'm going to put a little of this orange in there, this dirty orange, because the light, we're like looking up a ridge, and the light is hitting that area first. It's not hitting down where I'm walking. Need a bit more going on here, and perhaps something leaning out this way. Balance that out. Now, that's what I'm going to do with that brush. I'm going to get this crazy brush. You can also get a thin brush, something that's very thin. It has a reservoir, and then it has a long point, so that you can do these really fine kind of things. Again, I'm trying to be really, really careful. Oh my goodness, too much blue. Let's get some burnt sienna into that. Burnt sienna plus blue makes a dark color. There's a whole lot of weedy, tangly stuff in here. If it turns out that that's not exactly how these things are, that's okay, because I guarantee you something will fall down and look like that next week anyhow. I'm looking at my intervals top to bottom, right to left. I'm trying to come up with some variety in these things. Some darker, some lighter, so that they appear to be close, far. To review what will make it look close, darker, thicker. What will make it look farther away, lighter, thinner. probably am going to have to reinforce some of my leaves in the background. You can see that. You can get a thick line out of this if you push down on it. Stop, stand back, see what you're creating. Make sure it's plausible, make sure it's beautiful. It doesn't have to be exactly what we have there. It's a woods, trees are falling down all the time. Notice I'm trying to avoid making the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. I'm trying to stagger these I'm getting a lot of straight lines, so I'm going to try and get some curvier lines. That will look more natural too. Remember, a line is going to lead the viewer through the picture. So whatever you do, make sure you're pointing the viewer somewhere you want them to go. Putting that down, taking this brush, I want to get a little bit of cerulean blue, kind of very dense paint. While this is still damp, I want to touch it in there into these trunks so that it bleeds in. I want to get some brownish mixture. And I want to start doing a little bit of splatter in here to get some of this. And I'm going to smear it with my hand. To create some texture there. There's a lot of it in this kind of general vicinity. In fact, I may even blot that brush a little bit and just drag it on its side. Smear that even. Let's find some of that trunk in the midst of this business in here, which means I need some rinse. I'm going to try for something like this lavender, this cool grayish blue. It's called lavender, but it looks like a grayish blue. I'm going to put some of it in here. I'm going to put some of it back here. Trying to put some mystery around this thing. So now I'm beginning to negatively paint this foliage which is coming through here. Again, these marks, you don't want to chips on a cookie. You don't want that. You want to irregularly space them, which means you're probably going to have to very consciously do that, because we will tend to do that almost as a reflex. I think it's part of our, just your heartbeat, and your hand tends to move in regular just too regular. Put a little bit of that in here. I do want to add some of that. Let's get some of this bluish brownish and some of this lavender and make just a murky grayish cool color. Using the side, this is slow moving paint. You see when it up here, it's not going anywhere, it's not runny. That gives you a medium to relatively dark value, just depending on how dark the color is to begin with. That gives me a broken mark. I'm trying for irregularity, extreme irregularity. Let's make that ridge up there a little more apparent. This one definitely needs to be. I may even disturb some of this. Let's get in there a little bit of this orangey olive color. I see some of that back there. See, there's not much paint on that brush. If you put the brush down and you get a kind of a, whoa, that's too much orange, John. All right, let's put a little bit of cerulean in that to take the starch out of it, blot that. Oh, there goes the hairdryer. I'm trying to get some of these leaves up here. If you want to see great dry brush work, check out Andrew Wyeth. Oh my goodness. And if you're ever in the Chadds Ford, Philadelphia area, go to the Brandywine Museum and see the work of all three Wyeths, Andrew, Jamie, and NC, at the Brandywine Museum. One of the, I would say, best museums in America. Not a big one, but an amazing one. Using some of that same dull brown. Dull colors recede. In other words, colors that aren't very vivid. So they're going to stay in the background, I hope. If you see something that's floating in the air and isn't connected to the ground, get it back to the ground. Plausibility is a very important thing in painting. Now I'm going to bring this tree downhill so that it's not sitting on the ridge with the rest of them. That needs to connect to that. That could keep going. Maybe a little darker there because that interval was maybe a little too regular. If it's coming off a trunk, it should be a little thicker where it leaves the trunk and gets a little thinner as it goes away. Don't have them equal widths. There's some stuff leaning through here. Points our eye back to here. Now, a purple, ultramarine blue. To get a duller purple, I use the Cad Red. Oops. And a little bit of this dirty paint from around. Well, let's get some more blue in it. A dirty blue violet. I want to get some of the mystery and dark business down in here. Trying to frame these greens that were from our tie-dye stage, and again begin starting to paint some of these leaves in a negative fashion. We're going to paint some of them in a positive fashion too. That's coming up. Jane, the Des Moines crew, how are you guys? I miss you folks. Wish I could get up there more often. Now, I think I still want a little bit more warm color at the top, so I'm going to get some yellow ochre and some alizarin crimson, which makes a this is going to be a little runnier. I lost my so I'm going to try and get a bit of it back. that pattern, that wonderful pattern that I thought I saw in there. This might have been a good candidate for rough paper, because the texture would allow me to do this with a little more ease. This area down here, I'm not feeling that this is a, well, let's get some of that in there. Let's get a little bit of the orange. Make that orange, yellow-orange. Power, that's kind of powerful. The cadmiums are powerful colors. Nancy. Thank you, Carol. You know, this really is a kind of a spring. This could be spring too. It's just that the colors might be a little different in the spring than they would be in this time of year. Now I want to get some miscellaneous small darks here and there. But mainly they need to happen in here, because this needs to be darker. If you squint, this is a lot darker. So I'm going to get some cerulean, and it's very in shadow below the level of let's get more cerulean and more water. I'm going to do a glaze. So I'm going to get a run. Glaze is when you have a dry surface with some paint already on it. And then you go over it with a runny color. Put some of that in here to negatively paint these leaves. I'm squinting the whole time trying to see what I'm creating. Down here it should be shady and dark. Dark and deep and mysterious. And then down here, I think I'm going to glaze with some turquoise. So dryish and irregular glow. Oh, you know, sometimes, let's do this. This is kind of a Chen Chung Wei kind of thing. Chen Chung Wei is a very good Taiwanese painter. Sometimes he'll just splatter his paint in. Just get lots of it on there. And then he'll move it around. Leaving little bits, that allows leaving some of the previous color to appear in, you don't completely cover it up like a glaze might. It also lets you do some linear elements. And let's make that even darker by putting some ultramarine into it. Maybe a little bit of the alizarin. And then we're going to splatter that in as well. This is damp. There's water on the surface. So when this goes in, it's going to melt. And by melt, I mean that it's going to some of the mark will stay there, some of it's going to just spread out, but there'll be a little bit of the color showing through. Ooh, let's get some warm colors. A small amount of warm color in a cold area looks interesting, as does a small amount of cold color in an essentially warm area. And again, don't regularly space these like chips on a cookie. Keep them irregular. It's the woods. It's not a famous Amos chocolate chip. Now I think what I want to do here is I want to selectively darken with a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna some very, very key parts where that yoke of that tree is. This one here, I want one to be darker than the other, just so that there's some difference, There is a light log down there. I didn't want to create something that might cause problems. Okay, maybe a strong, murky, dark area back around here. And when you've got thick paint like that on the surface, you can scratch into it, because using your fingernail or something to make a light mark. I'm waiting for the glisten to go off the surface. It's not quite off yet. I don't know if you can see this. There's like a edge here. Kathy, do I need a snack? We always need a snack, right? Can make a light mark and it'll show. That would be a fun thing to do down here if I wasn't, But I think what I want to do, since it's a primarily lighter area, I want to do darker things. It's the character of what's in there. It's not necessarily, you don't have to you can make a dark on a light perform the same function as a light on a dark. So we're just looking for linear elements, and again, I'm being very careful with my spacing. And same thing as with the trunks, I don't want these all to be evenly spaced or the same size. So, one last thing to do that's fun is we're going to get a more opaque color, like either the titanium white or this jaune brilliant. Smallish brush, very little water. I'm going to put some cad yellow with that. Maybe a little bit of the turquoise to get a slimy Mountain Dew green. It looks like I can make this look more like, and these are opaque marks, but because we're using thick paint, it's going to dry with the same sort of, too orange. So let's do some of that up here. Now, these are positive marks. They're not corrections. So they shouldn't look like I was trying to fix something that I blew, I made a mistake. Rinse that, blot that, go back to my yellow-green. I know the Transparent Watercolor Society will have a cow about this, but I don't care. So by putting some of these little leaves in front of these darker areas, I make this blurry shape look more irregular. That's that. I want some real yellow-green color down here. A little bit lighter version of it up there, and if you put light over dark, dark over light, you're creating texture at the edge of your foliage. This is very important for getting a sense of foliage. The texture is where the lighter color is contrasted against the darker color. In the middle of these groups, you don't see as much texture unless you're really looking in there for it, and you can get a sense of the texture better if you let it appear at the edges. And you can break up some of these two straight lines by doing that sort of thing. We could also just get some of the plain Jaune Brilliant on its own and do some light grassy type things. I still think I would like to have a few more nondescript darks here and there. I'm doing the same thing that I just did with those lighter opaque colors with these darker colors to negatively paint a more textured shape. Out of the existing thing. So let's detape and see what we get. But the big things to remember about foliage is that the thing like I just said, that the texture of the foliage appears more at the edge of where the body of foliage is. Where if it's going over a light area, like a leaf going out into an area where there's sky, it will usually be dark on a light sky. Or if it's somewhere down here, it might be light across a dark. Don't try to paint the texture, stipple it into the middle. That always looks just not quite as good or as painterly or as organic. I mean, and yeah, I'm trying to be impressionistic. I'm not trying to be photographic. But I hopefully I get this lovely snaking the eye through the picture with the foliage. Maybe it could be, now that I've got the tape off, it could be a little bit yellower green. See, this yellow and that yellow are not in the same place. So I can make that one back there go further away by being a bluer green. Just a bit to do that. Yeah, that helps. I like that color, gee whiz. Let's put a little bit of that in here to break this up as well, where it's kind of curling under. And as always, you always squint so that you see the value structure correctly. You want to see that, okay, this is a fundamentally light area, and those yellows and oranges that we may think are light because they're a stronger color, they're not. The sky is actually lighter, so they have to be a little darker, don't they? I'm going to even put a little bit of that back here too, so that that stays in the background. Maybe even glaze a bit of that into here. And then your trees, to make them look like they go in different places. Hi, Jackie. Thicker in the front, light, thinner in the back, darker in the front, lighter in the back. Unless, gee whiz, you get these oddball situations like this. I'm still going to think about how we might do this in watercolor, but that's really a kind of an oil subject. I probably could be a little darker back here. I don't know, maybe. Let's glaze. But hopefully you get the idea. Variety in the width, variety in the value of those trunks, variety in their width, variety in their spacing and their placing, variety in their tilt. I really like the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It's kind of like sending us, and then this takes us back down to there. It's moving the eye through the picture very, very nicely. Where else? I might want to make that area a little darker in there. Crisper edges in the front, softer edges in the back. I think I could use a little more strength. In this area. Variety of value in those trunks, variety in color, especially along anything that's a linear element. Hi, Lisa. Make sure that it's not the same all along its length. See if you can get the value to change slightly, the color to change slightly. All of those things will sort of help. Now, Jane asks, why is this an oil subject? It's because we've got it's going to be hard to paint around that bright, as when watercolor we work light to dark. It's more difficult to paint a lot of darks around a few lights than it is to paint a few darks on a lot of lights in watercolor. So yeah, it can be done. It's a little more nail biting and white knuckle kind of thing. Whereas it would be kind of easy peasy with an opaque subject. You'd kind of bang that darker color in there, and then you'd pull the light colors right down on top. And everybody would say, oh man, that looks great. So it can be done. I'm going to try and think about it. But I do want to try this one with the water. And we could maybe work a bit of this into that subject because there's a lighter tree that's catching a lot of light back there. Here we've got a light set of, I don't know what it is, with some kind of red berries. There's some very complicated leaves on top of the water here. So this one there's going to require a lot of thinking, but compositionally, this is just really cool. Anyway, I hope you guys, I got some good info off to you. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you all very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.